check out Cajun Lights, your complete dog hunting outfitter. Tracking equipment, leashes, collars, dog supplies, and much, much more. You can find it all at CajunLights.com. And don't forget their outstanding lineup of lights. You can find it all at CajunLights.com. Elite nutrition products are the hottest thing on the market right now for dog and horse owners. And Houndsman XP is a dealer. You can find all their products on our website at houndsmanxp.com. Over the past 5 years, you've tuned into this podcast, and I don't take it lightly. We have built a mutual trust. And when I recommend a product, it's because I believe in it, I use it, and I'm given my seal of approval for that. I'm putting my name on that. And with Elite Nutrition products, I do trust it. I do use it. I've seen great results with their essential dogs, their pre and probiotics, their tick-borne disease treatment. It's all natural. It's a great alternative to pharmaceuticals when used appropriately. If you expect extreme performance, you need Elite Nutrition. Available from houndsmanxp.com.
The snipe got up like 2 meters in front of us. And it flew, I don't know, maybe like 25 meters. It wasn't even that far of a flight. But you just chased it down in such a short amount of time and plucked it out the sky. It was just such a shocking experience. And it was still one of the best ones because it was her 50th kill. And yeah, still one of the more spectacular flights that I had. But yeah, just the whole experience and everything with it being that day and the day before when it happened. That's one that sticks out. Not necessarily as being spectacular, but definitely one that sticks out.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast, and we are going to start jumping around a little bit. I haven't been able to make it around as much as I'd like to here in the last couple of months to do some face-to-face conversations with people, just the logistics and the way things have gone, money, timing, etc., etc. As you all know, life happens, but I'm trying to make the most of things, and I'm trying to get back in touch with some other friends from overseas and different countries and things like that, and trying to see kind of what's up in some areas that I've visited prior, and maybe even talk to some new people while I'm at it. And Cameron is another one of those new people that I haven't had a chance to meet him face to face yet, but it was nice getting a chance to talk to him for the first time. Our mutual friend Andre gave me his contact info, and I hit him up to see if he'd be willing to talk shop for a little bit, and luckily he was willing to oblige. So I got a chance to talk to him some about what falconry looks like for him in South Africa, and hopefully you all will enjoy it. It was kind of enlightening for me to hear some of the different stuff that he's done, so I hope you enjoy. And over the next coming weeks here, we'll jump around probably to some different countries and do some different things and see what shakes out. So enjoy, and here we go. Thanks for making the time for me today, Cam. Appreciate you.
Thank you, John, for having me on. I appreciate you.
No, I'm glad that I hit Andre up a little bit ago and was just telling him that I need to start trying to get some follow-ups done and some new folks done and stuff. If I'm going to do more remote stuff, which it kind of looks like by default with my life circumstances at the moment, I'm going to have to start doing a little bit more of. I figure I might as well go ahead and hit back up some of my international buddies and see what's up and see if I can't get anybody else on. And he threw your name out, and so I'm glad we could work this out.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out to Andre, and I'm glad that he put me forward. Yeah, we'll definitely see if we can find you a few other South Africans who'd be keen to hop on.
Cool. Yeah, no, I look forward to it. I love South Africa. I look forward to coming back. Hopefully I get a chance to next year. We'll see what shakes out. But yeah, so remind me again, I can't remember what part of South Africa you said you were from.
So I'm from the East Coast in a province called KwaZulu-Natal. I'm from a small farming town called Ishawi in Zululand, but I now live in Howick, which is still in KwaZulu-Natal, or Natal. We part of the Natal Falconry Club. there's only one falconry club here, and it's currently the oldest standing falconry club in South Africa, which is pretty cool.
Out of all the provinces.
Yes, and it's even older than our national South African Falconry Association.
Okay, yeah, so older than SAFA even. Crazy. Huh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, and so when you say older than all these other clubs, I mean, approximately how old is it then?
So the Natal Falconry Club was first formed in 1962, and it started in 1962. Started 1961, but it was officially formed in 1962 and has pretty much been going ever since then. Some other clubs have formed and then closed down or shut down. Then others have started back up again, whereas SAFA was officially started in between 1990 and 1991. There's a bit of dispute about exactly when, but 1991 officially first meet, and yeah.
Nice. So, and you said you've been in part of the club and the falconry community in that province or in your province then for about a decade. Is that what you said?
Yes, yeah, pretty much about a decade. I started when I was 15 years old, and my 10-year is next year. So yeah, I'm quite excited. It's been a crazy ride. I was very young when I started, but I was really welcomed into the club. Like, we've got such a good community. The guys, I mean, I wasn't even allowed to drive at that stage. So guys would pick me up from my house and take me to places, take me on trips. So, the community has been so good to me and so kind to me. So I'm excited. It's been a good few years, and now I'm kind of getting the opportunity to do that for some newer guys. But yeah, we still getting on that.
Good deal. Yeah, I mean that's part of what makes the falconry world go round is being willing to pay it forward and being willing to do for others what they did for you, and I'm glad that it sounds like it's pretty much the same across the world in a lot of ways. I mean, that's kind of how we operate here in the U.S. too, and without that mentality, I think this probably would have died out a long time ago. I mean, how many people have you officially sponsored then? Is this like your first kind of opportunity for that?
So our system, we basically we become a mentor. So we don't call it, we don't sponsor people per se, but it's basically the same thing. Our apprenticeship program is quite similar and kind of based off the NAFA one. So, you first arrive in the club and you have to go and hunt with a few different guys, see what it's actually about, see, is this something that I actually want to do? And then from there, you get a mentor, and from there kind of work you through your first couple birds. So I've officially got one mentor or one apprentice with a bird, and I'm helping out a few other people who haven't got their first birds yet, but are in the process of, writing a written test, doing their practical test, getting equipment, that type of thing.
Okay. And as far as the way stuff works there too, you guys don't have an official falconry school or anything like that, like some of the other countries do. It's more of just a club and actual kind of mentor, it's system kind of like in sponsor. Well, the equivalent of our sponsor. So there's not an actual program or anything you can go like Zimbabwe and stuff like that does too, or whatever.
No, nothing super official. It's very much. We try and make it as practical as possible, because especially since I've come through, I've been one of the only guys in our Natal club who stuck it out over the last 10 years, and in that time, a lot of people show quite a lot of interest initially, but when it actually comes to the practical side, they'll happily write the test and happily study for the exam and the written element of it. But when it's time to actually clean bird perches and fly their birds every single day, or at least to a high standard and often, that's when people start to drop off. So I think the guys before me have had a bit of foresight to try and make it as practical as possible from the start. Get the guys out hunting with 3 different members of the club before they actually can even do anything else in the process. Get them out and see what falconry is really about. So our strategy or our process is not necessarily, there's no falconry school, but it's very practical.
Okay. And my knowledge of South Africa and how things are done there is pretty limited to, the Cape area, obviously. That's where I've talked to the most guys, as having had a chance to go a couple years ago, which is crazy now. It seems it's been almost that long already. That's been my knowledge base though. And I don't really have a whole lot of knowledge base as to how things are done differently in a lot of the different provinces and stuff. So I'm happy to be able to pick your brain a little bit and see what kind of these subtle differences are between provinces and everything. So, so as far as, game, terrain, all that kind of stuff, I mean, how different is it geography wise from where you're at closer to the East Coast to where, say, they're at in like the more western side of the Western Cape and stuff?
Yes, yeah. So the Western Cape, I haven't gone on any falconry trips down there. But in speaking with Andre and in speaking with a lot of the guys there, the main differences, especially when flying, bigger birds, initially if you're flying African goshawks or black sparrowhawks, I think it is relatively similar, but I know they get winter rainfall and we get summer rainfall. So in terms of their duck seasons, their seasons start out not so great for duck and get progressively better throughout the season. And they're trying to extend their duck season later. Whereas with us, we get our summer rain, so there's a lot of duck around pretty early in summer because we get all our rainfall. And then the beginning of the season is really good and it tends to dry out later on in the season. We have different game birds. I believe they also have grey wing and Cape Franklin. We have Swainson spurfowl towards the northern part of KwaZulu-Natal, and Natal Franklin, although those two are a bit difficult to target with a falcon, but our main quarry is grey-winged Franklin, red-winged Franklin where I'm from, and then also red-necked Franklin. But those are quite difficult. They tend to schmockle a bit and schmockle. They run through the grass and make it difficult to pin with a dog. But in terms of the terrain, in my area at least, or even in KwaZulu-Natal, there's quite a large array or quite a large variety of terrain. If you go up more north or at least towards the coast, you've got Bushveld, which is where I grew up and where I first started flying birds. And those areas are quite difficult for falcons. I did struggle with my first falcon when I was still down in those areas. A lot of sugarcane farms. And when you can find open ground, it's generally bushveld. A lot of not tall trees, but like tall bushes and a lot of acacia type things with thorns. So it's not ideal for a falcon, but really good for short wings. Especially, I had a red-breasted sparrowhawk for 5 years, and that bird was, I love that bird, especially like going in and around bushes after small LBJs, which is really good. So where I live now, though, it's more inland and slightly south of KwaZulu-Natal. And it's a lot more grassland and better for game birds. So I'm actually kind of packed up already. I'm moving house this weekend to live out on a farm. And the farm I'm moving to has a lot of red-winged Franklin on the top of the hills, and then red-necked Franklin slightly lower, and lots of quail now in the summer when they migrate down. So we're very lucky in KwaZulu-Natal, especially with our quail migration. So pretty much most of the other provinces will have a main winter season where they're hunting partridge or spurfowl and duck. But we in Natal, we can do that in the winter. And in the summer, we have a quail migration of common quail. And sure, when it's a big year, you can walk for a couple 100 meters in a field and you'll get 5 or 6 points on quail. So that type of flying is really, really fun. Last year, I did it with a Lanneret, and was some of the best and most fun flying I've had ever. So that's kind of how the different provinces are. We're quite similar. The Free State, I guess, is quite similar to us in Natal. They're further inland. They have similar game birds, as well as Orange River Franklin, which are really nice to fly. And they also get an influx of sand grouse. So they have a Birchall sand grouse, and further up north, you can get yellow-throated sand grouse and Namaqua sand grouse in the Free State. So, yeah, the guys who fly sand grouse, that's probably the most spectacular flying. But the guys who do it consistently, they really, they have to struggle to put kills under the belt, because those sand grouse are such hardy birds and so fast, and the way they bank and almost pick up speed in the bank, it's it's very difficult. I've never been able to catch one, but hopefully in the next coming years I'll be able to put one in the bag.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the whole sand grouse thing, and I've heard not just from kind of where you're at and Free State, parts of Africa, but also different parts of like the Middle East and from guys that have gone to say I can't remember, it's around like Morocco or something like that, or some of those different types of areas. And I don't know if I don't know how different the species are. I'm so, when it comes to sometimes I feel ignorant enough just from some of the different game bird species that we have available to us, just because there's so much I don't get to see. I only go by what guys tell me from these conversations and stuff. But I'm pretty sure that's what was mentioned in prior conversations. So I've heard that the sand grouse flights and stuff are pretty awesome, and especially depending on which species it is too. It's comparable, if not even cooler than, say, the guys that hunt sage grouse out west, here and stuff. But I've not got to see any of that yet. So really, for the most part,
I would love to see sage grouse one day. Definitely need to take a trip. I actually spent some time in the States when I was on exchange. I was probably about 16 years old. I'd only flown one bird, but I happened to be in the States for 3 months on a school exchange period. And I never got to see sage grouse. I was in Virginia, so I actually only got to see some squirrel hawking and some duck hawking. But it was still really cool. And I want to see the sage grouse thing. That sounds, from the videos and the stories I've heard, it sounds incredible.
Well, and I'm sure you can attest to this also. People that aren't from the United States don't really grasp just how big the United States are until they actually see it for themselves. So I've had friends, before ask me, it's like, well, I want to come visit you, and I also want to go see, some people fly, grouse and stuff out west and this, that, and the other. I'm like, are you going to be over here for like months? But yeah. And, being in Virginia, I mean, you were all the way on the eastern side, but yeah. So what did you think of squirrel hawking?
I thought it was cool. It was, we don't really hunt. I mean, besides the guys who hunt eagles here, we don't really hunt mammals that much. We're mostly hunting birds. So it was very different. I saw it with a red-tailed hawk. I didn't actually watch any Harris hawks kill any. I saw the red-tailed hawks catch some. And then I also actually saw an aplomado flying on pigeons. And the aplomado kind of caught my eye. It's a bird that I think would do quite well here. The red-tailed hawks would do well. We've got small mammals, not so much where I am, but in the Free State, there's lots of like ground squirrels and stuff that you could probably hunt. But the aplomados, I think an aplomado on maybe what we have lapwing here, or maybe even on quail or something, I think that would be quite nice. So I really enjoyed watching the aplomados fly. And yeah, the squirrel hawking, it was cool. It was just very different. Nothing like I'd experienced before.
It's a lot more three-dimensional. It's a lot more in your face and stuff too. I mean, especially the people, especially in other countries that don't get a chance to see it up close, it's hard for them, even after seeing videos and stuff, to really understand just how engaging and how fun it can be. Whenever it's seeing it up close and being a part of it's a lot. I'm sure you can attest to this a lot more.
There were like a lot of us. They were all like getting involved. It's not like one guy is flying his bird and everyone's standing back and watching. It's like it's a whole team experience. It's quite fun. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I actually, whenever I was going to the Cape Falconry Club's meet with Andre and stuff whenever I visited over there, I actually gave a short talk one night on squirrel hawking and showed a few videos and stuff. And I showed also a picture of the difference in size between our fox squirrels and our gray squirrels and stuff too. And was it primarily fox squirrels that you were seeing hunted? I've heard that that's primarily what they have over that way.
Yeah,
But
sure. I can't even remember, to be honest. I think it probably was. Yeah, but I can't really remember.
Yeah. I'm sure it's been a minute since you were there.
Yeah, dude, it's like 8 years ago. It's and I was still quite new to falconry, so like I'd only flown a bird at that stage, so I was like still trying to absorb, and now I'm like seeing it on the other side of the world. It was quite a cool. And again, the people were really, really welcoming. Like I caught a train from the school I was at. I caught a train. I think it was like 5 hours to Pennsylvania, which is where I actually think we went flying. And then some guy picked me up, and as I got in the car, there was like a bull chattery in the front seat. I hopped in the back seat, and we drove around town trying to catch red-tailed hawks. We didn't catch anything though. And then he drove me like a few more hours to another guy, and we all went hunting this one weekend. There were probably like 5 or 6 different falconers who just came just to show, like, give me a show in a way, which I thought was really, really nice. And it was, good to see it happening on both sides of the world.
For sure. Yeah. The falconry community worldwide, for the most part, I would say the vast majority is they're very hospitable, very accommodating, and for the most part, very welcoming. I know that's been what my experience has been anyway, having been to multiple countries now. And granted, I was also connected usually with friends of friends or things like that beforehand. So there is already a little bit of a comfort zone there, more so than what there would have been, obviously, in say your scenario, where you're just kind of coming willy-nilly all the way across the world and just kind of taking a leap of faith by a train to meet up with some folks and stuff. But so remind me again, what were you studying, or what was the reason for you coming abroad to go to school?
So the school that I was at in South Africa had an exchange program, actually all around the world. But the school that I went to was a school called Woodbury Forest, which was in Virginia. And it just so happened, like, you apply for the program, and then they do interviews and whatever. And then it was, I ended up going to that school. It just was luck, I guess. But I was there for about 3 months. And in that time, one of their scholars was here in South Africa and experiencing it here. But I did get linked up by Lauren, who flies eagles. I don't know if you've met or spoken to Lauren, but she came out to South Africa for a while, and I went flying with her a few times while she had a crowned eagle here. And she was, when I told her that I was going to the States, she was like, hey, and she put me in touch with the guys. So it was, I guess, through a friend, so it was a bit easier, but it was still, I was quite young, and I was, wasn't too sure of America yet at that stage, and but they were very, very welcoming.
Good. I'm glad you had a good experience. So before we get too much more into the weeds with things, though, I mean, I guess I should go ahead and just get the age-old question out of the way and ask you, how you even got into all this and how you discovered it, and kind of what the process was for you after you discovered it, getting into it and everything.
So growing up, my dad was a birder, a bird watcher. I'm not sure what people go by, but he, from when I was young, he was very into his birds, but all birds, like raptors, small birds, sunbirds, whatever. He was just really, really into it. So growing up, I was always aware of birds, and I loved seeing birds up close. But when I got to about 12 or 13 years old, I started gravitating more towards birds of prey. And apparently, this is something my mom told me, but when I was very young, maybe like 5 or 6 years old, a TV ad or a program on TV showed up with a guy and a bird on his glove, and he was walking around. Like, I don't know if he was hunting or something, but it was on TV. And I turned to my mom and I said, one day I'm going to do that. I don't remember this conversation, but she told me about it. So when I was about 13, I was leaning more towards birds of prey. And I was going to a certain school for high school. I thought I was going there. So our high school, you start in grade 8 or 8th grade, and this was about in 6th or 7th grade. We started to go for interviews at different schools, and I thought I was going one place, and my cousin convinced me to go to an interview at a school called Hilton College. And Hilton is one of the few places where people could do falconry at school, but that's not why I went for the interview. It was just my cousin convinced me. And when I arrived at the school for the interview, the guy taking the interview or like the tour of the school asked me what I was interested in. So I said, yeah, I like wildlife, animals, birds, I've always been an outdoorsy person. And he was like, okay, cool. I know where to take you. And he took me like across the school to the wildlife center. And at the wildlife center, there were two guys, but the one guy I saw, and he had an African goshawk. He was doing falconry at the school. And he was I think he was a grade 10 pupil at that stage. And I turned to my parents and I was like, hey, this is the school I want to go to. And yeah, anyway, it is quite an expensive school. So I had to actually get a scholarship to try and go there. So I was so infatuated by this idea of doing falconry at school, worked really hard, and I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go there. And I arrived in grade 8, beginning of the year, and about a month in, I approached the teacher who had been doing falconry or teaching people how to do falconry. And he told me that he had just stopped doing falconry at the school. They had just closed down the program. They found that, or felt like too many of the boys who were doing it were keen to go hunting or keen to take the bird for a hunt. When it came time to like cleaning the perches and doing the husbandry, or on days they couldn't fly their bird, it just became the teacher's problem. So he told me that was the situation, but that if I wanted to pursue it on my own, that I could do falconry at the school, but it would have to be all my thing. Like it wasn't his thing, and I wouldn't be like his apprentice. I would have to go through the club, and then he would just let me do it at the school. So I actually met with a guy who actually became my mentor, but this is way before then. He told me a bit what it was about, how to start falconry, what a bird was, etc., or like what birds you could get, etc., etc. And I decided that seeing as it was my first year at high school, I decided that it probably wasn't best to do it straight away. I was still getting used to the whole high school thing, and felt like it would be better to rather wait it out for a bit. So about a year later, I decided it was time to actually try and do it at school. So we approached the guy who had been doing it at school, bought all of his equipment, and then approached the club, went out hunting with a few members, and then wrote the written test, did the practical exam, and then I got my first bird on the 22nd of December 2016, and I was 15 years old at the time. And haven't looked back since. I've had quite a few birds since then, but I've had a really, really good time with that first bird. Especially, it was just such a big learning experience. I'd had animals and stuff before, but nothing quite as like intense and something that I was so passionate about. Like I would wake up early and just want to spend time with this bird. So looking back, it was some of the best times, but it was also a big, big learning curve.
Well, and I think there's something to be said, and there's a lot of truth when falconers say that your first bird, more often than not, a lot of times ends up being, if not your best bird, one of your best birds. Just simply because you're putting in all that initial enthusiasm, time, effort, and energy, and you are only allowed to have that one bird. At least that's the way it is here in the States. I'm sure it's probably similar there too. You can only fly one bird as a beginning apprentice and stuff. But was that pretty much kind of how you still feel? I mean, ironically enough, it sounds like we've been in falconry about the same amount of time. My first season was fall 2015. So, I still think that my first bird is still probably one of my best, if not my best, probably. Just simply because it's getting all your time, it's getting all your attention, it's getting all your TLC, so to speak. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely one of my best birds. Not necessarily like it wasn't the most spectacular flying. It was just a goshawk off the fist on things close by, but it was just I loved it. Like it was hard work. I was walking through fields for hours every afternoon that I could. Like I'd go spend 3 hours and catch one or two testiculars or like small grass birds, but it was just so much fun. And looking back, I had so much fun with that bird. And because I was still quite young, my dad was kind of involved in the process at that stage. And whenever he talks about falconry and like my birds, he's always like, "No, man, that first bird of yours has been his best." So he was quite involved, and he also loved that bird. And I think having one bird really does make a huge difference, and being able to give that bird all your attention. I've never really flown more than one bird in a season, but even just having two birds, like even if I've got one in a pen and I'm flying another one, it's still like a different focus point and something else to think about. Whereas when it's one bird and that's all you're focusing on, and you're not really comparing it to anything because it's just, you've never had a bird before. So I think that part is also really nice. You've not like, oh, I wish it did this thing as good as my other bird did. It's not about that. It's just like, you're happy with what you got, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing with any of that at all. I think for the most part, yeah, and it's. What are your thoughts on this too? This is something I like to ask people because I know what my thoughts are on this. But do you feel like you would have been better off having more early struggles, or you think you're better off with having more early success and being able to appreciate kind of what you have at any given time when it comes to, these different birds that you're flying?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think having like a good start and like having a good start with like a good first bird. It definitely wasn't perfect. I'll be the first to admit that, especially its recall. I had a few issues with its recalls on some occasions, but I think that having a few early wins was really helpful to almost get the momentum going. I think that if I had maybe had a first bird that maybe didn't fly very well, or had, for example, gotten a rehab bird that couldn't actually fly or hunt successfully, I think that would have almost put like a bit of a maybe a bump in the road. I guess you got to go through some hardships, but I think having my first bird have been, at least in my eyes, successful, I think that allowed me to build some momentum and feel like I almost belonged in the club and belonged in this falconry thing. So I think that was helpful. I've lost a few birds. And I had one bird pass away, and those kind of knocks also, I think were good for me. You learn a few things, and you also realize, how to improve, how to get better. So I think they're both important, but I think starting with some successes, I think was good, at least for me, in my opinion.
I know for me, and this is just speaking for me, people have heard me mention this before, but I mean, the first few birds that I flew were pretty good experiences for the most part, with some obvious exceptions. But I didn't realize until I had a really decent streak of struggling, like with a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but with a handful of the birds that I flew after those, because I was choosing to go from one end of the spectrum to the other, especially with the cards stacked against me and just having the right prey base, the right choice of things for my area. I knew that there was going to be a lot more of a struggle anyway, just because of what I was choosing to try to do. But I didn't really fully appreciate what I had in the first few birds that I flew, until I did start to struggle a little bit. And then I was just kind of like, oh, well, so this is kind of how probably it normally is, So I didn't know if that was kind of how you felt in a way also, or if you even did feel like you kind of struggled a little bit more early on, or kind of had a good mix.
My second bird actually was, if looking back, terrible. It was a bird that was given to me by someone else, and not to bad name them or anything, but I just got the bird, and it wasn't in a great state. It hadn't been hunting much. It had been kind of kept on a perch a bit too much, and not being flown as often as it should have been. And that bird really actually put me off black sparrowhawks, and I'm about to dip my toes back in the water and hopefully get one in the next week or two. But yeah, that bird kind of scarred me. So I think I had a first bird that was very chilled. I really enjoyed, and my second bird, it would catch stuff, and if it was on the ground and I accidentally walked a bit too close before it properly had broken in and started eating, it would just fly away like a kilometer. And at that stage, I didn't have a car or anything. I would just be on foot, running around in circles after this bird. So, yeah, I think that made me realize how lucky I was with my first bird. But I think more importantly, it made me realize what I need to be strict about in training early on with a new bird. And since then, I haven't taken in any like hand-me-down birds. I've always been very like strict on catching my own birds from the wild and getting a fresh start, because I don't ever want to have to deal with the problems that I had then. Sitting for hours underneath the tree, swinging a lure, the bird's hungry, but just didn't want to come down. So things like that really did, and I think that kind of dampened my enthusiasm a bit. And it was only when my now mentor came to me and said, listen, I've bred a red-breasted sparrowhawk, and it's a female. Would you like to fly it? And he had only bred one in many years of trying, and he decided to give her to me instead of flying it himself. So, I still owe to him big for that. But that really turned the corner, because that was like another great experience. And like I was suddenly back in having a bird that did what it was supposed to do, came back when it was supposed to, and also caught a lot of stuff. And that really got the confidence back in the gears. And from there, it was a bit more enjoyable, I think.
So out of all the species that you've flown then, and out of all the birds that you've flown then, would you say that was probably your best overall and longest tenured experience then?
Yes, yeah. So the red-breasted sparrowhawk chick, she was 5 years old, unfortunately, when she passed away. And that was by far the most times I'd flown a bird successively. Normally I would fly for a season or two and release. But that's still kind of what I do. I'll fly for a while and then release. But that bird, because she was a full imprint taken from the mother at a day old, I couldn't release her. So I just, early on put in a lot of work into doing the right things, and it paid off. And I had I really, really loved that bird. Certain things that make me not really like imprints, especially a full imprint. So now I really prefer passage birds. But that's definitely been probably my best experience and my favorite bird still.
And was it a male or female, you said?
It was a female. She flew in her first season, 213 grams.
Okay. So, I mean, I didn't get to see one fly, but I did get to see one up close when one of the guys was releasing theirs whenever I was down there, whenever I made my trip down there. And they look like really neat birds, but I don't really know how they compare to, I mean, our as you probably know already, I mean, our three main accipiters here are your sharp-shinned hawks, your goshawks, and your Cooper's hawks, right? So I don't know how those sparrowhawks compare to our accipiters, or even other sparrowhawks, in other countries and stuff. I mean, how would you describe the overall temperament and stuff of that bird?
I've heard them described as they've got the engine of a black sparrowhawk, not quite as persistent like over long distances, but that acceleration is probably unmatched. They're probably the best over a short distance. And they've got the temperament of our African goshawks, which are it's like having a parrot. They are super chilled. Mine was a full imprint, so, not quite like a passage bird would be. But that bird would sometimes, especially in its first year, like I could sit with it on my lap, and after enough time it would lie down on me and just chill So that bird had a really, really nice temperament. I didn't have a dog at that stage though, so she never really liked dogs because in her first year or two, she wasn't really exposed to too many dogs. So that did become a bit of an issue. But besides that, she was golden with people, cars. I did a few talks, I guess, at local schools here, and it's like 10-year-old kids all like, so excited to see this bird, but she was chilled. She could handle it, no problem. So they're very, very chilled birds. And that's why they're quite early on, even though they're quite small, you can fly them quite early in our grading system and when you can fly birds. So they're quite a nice one. They're just very difficult to find. So our province, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Cape are the two main provinces where you get them. I'm sure you get them in a few others, but our area, a bit north of where I am, actually the farm I'm moving to has got wild red spars or red-breasted sparrowhawks on them. So they are difficult to get, but if you can get one, sure, they are fantastic birds. For small birds, they can't take duck or any type of spurfowl or franklin. Having said that, I did catch a red-billed teal with mine, but purely an accident, and could never replicate that. But it did happen.
That would probably be that's quite a size difference still.
I'll send you the
photo. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you always have those weird abnormality, exception to the rule, kind of weird things happen with falconry for sure. But the one I saw, it wasn't, I mean, it didn't look too awful different in size from our sharp-shinned hawks and stuff. Looks pretty comparable. And overall, I mean, they look like pretty cool birds. I mean, accipiters in general, especially small ones, it seems like they fly with a constant death wish. Like there's all kinds of just creative ways that they can destroy themselves at any given time. But I'm sure that's you probably have a lot of, even in the 5 seasons that you flew her before she finally passed on you. I'm sure there were probably lots of memorable close calls, so to speak, that you probably had. I mean, what were some of the close calls that you had with with your
one of our scariest things is actually wild black sparrowhawks. They come in out of nowhere, and they, especially for the small red-breasted sparrowhawk, quite a few guys have had them taken by them. So I was flying her one day, and she chased after a quail or something. And our black sparrowhawks normally will hunt out of trees and on flying on passage, but this one was actually up in a thermal, and she was chasing out of this. And I suddenly saw her not so interested in the bird she was chasing anymore. She was kind of not really too keen, and I wasn't too sure. And out of nowhere, I saw this black sparrow coming in. I was like, "Oh, here we go, my bird's gone." And she managed to kind of duck under it, and it shot past her. And she just went and lay it and just sat in the grass and hid in the grass. And sure, that was a close call. But also with fences and stuff like that, she could hunt birds through fences, and that always gets me nervous. But she was really, really agile. They've got I think the longest tail by comparison to their size of all of our accipiters here. So they're really good at turning and banking, and can almost bank on themselves. So she never had any actual impact with the fence or anything, but she could bob and weave through them, which was really, really cool.
Well, that's neat. Yeah, I think that it sounds like your black spars and our Coopers, hawks, as far as just in relation to what we tend to lose micros more to than anything, at least around here anyway. I mean, I've almost lost a kestrel to a Cooper's hawk before, right in front of me. Literally, the kestrel was flying back to me while I was sitting in my driver's seat, and I looked down at my dashboard, and I felt this gust of wind, and all of a sudden I heard the alarm chitters from the kestrel, and I look back in the rearview mirror, and then I look in the rearview mirror, and then I look back and I see the Cooper's hawk carrying a kestrel off, and I got out of the car real quick and chased after it and managed to get the bird to drop it. But it sounds like you guys' black spar with your smaller birds is kind of like what our
Cooper's
relative,
Hawks.
yeah. So, yeah, and that, and I mean, even red-tailed hawks are bad,
Sure.
with trying to kill and rob and stuff. So
That's always scary, eh? And from what I've heard, I think that the Cooper's Hawks mentality and the Black Sparrowhawks mentality is very similar. Like they're a bit highly strung, not always that easy to tame down. They, can be quite aggressive, but that's what makes them such a joy and like such a nice thing to watch fly because of that like highly strung nature. They just want to go and catch and kill that thing.
yeah, if you can get them dialed in, and if you can get one that's not going to be an absolute terror to deal with, then yeah, I mean, that's what I've heard from the people who have successfully flown them. My time is yet to come with that. I've tried 2 Passage Cooper's Hawks, and I just ended up feeding them up and letting them go. I know where I went wrong with them. So, I mean, until I have more time that I know that I could get out every single day and hunt with them and stuff, it ain't happening for me again.
What would you say? I mean, I don't know if this is normally a two-way conversation, but what would you say has been your best bird that you've flown?
I still think probably my favorite bird that I've flown, and I only had her for the kestrels that I've flown. I've really only had usually for about a month and a half to 2 months on average, just because when I did start to fly them, I flew them for hours every single day. Just plunking, nothing, not apex falconry by any stretch, but just pure fun. And, kestrels on starlings, just, whatever. It's, I would say still to this day, my favorite bird that I've flown was the second kestrel I flew, and I flew her, I think it was 2019. I mean, it's been a handful of years now, but that bird was my favorite bird to fly, still to this day. I mean, I've had a lot of other close seconds, but there was always asterisk marks with those other birds, certain things I absolutely hated. And, and this bird though was really cool. There wasn't really anything about her I didn't like. And I just got a little greedy the day that I lost her. I flew her just a little heavier than I should have. And after catching 5 or 6 starlings, she flew off on me. It was my fault. But, I mean, that was the kestrel that I caught like 20 starlings with one time in one outing.
Yo.
And yeah, just over like, really over like 3.5 to 4 hours. That's been my favorite bird so far. Still, I think, there's a lot of different random, really fun memories that I have. I guess overall, my second favorite bird would be, the first bird I flew, which was my male red tail, the first falconry bird I ever flew, and had a really good first season with that bird. Got like 32 or 34 rabbits with him, and he was a good flying bird, really easy to deal with. But yeah, I mean, and these are totally two-way conversations for sure. I like to, that's my methodology. I like to keep these as conversational as possible. So yeah, I mean, if you got any other questions you think of, feel free. But yeah, I mean, that to answer your question, that's, I would say still to this day, that kestrel is my favorite bird that I've flown.
That's cool, eh? Sure. And it's nice when, I found, at least me personally, when I've flown short wings, it's very much about the hunting. It's like, I'm trying to hunt and I'm trying to just be out there and have fun. And I think that's similar to what you're saying with the kestrel. Whereas when I moved over to long wings, and some of the long wings I've flown, I get more caught up in the, this how spectacular the flight is. And, it's still about the kill, but it's can sometimes be a bit like, I wish the bird was higher, or I wish it was more vertical, or, to be a bit greedy, to be honest. But when it's just about flying a short wing in the field with your dog, it's just so much fun. And that's what I'm hoping to go back to now with this upcoming bird.
Yeah, and I actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because whenever I was in South Africa and hanging out with Andre and stuff, we had a lot of fun kind of joking around about that a little bit. It's kind of an ongoing joke in the falconry community, I think, in general, no matter where you're at, that, if you become a long winger, right, it stops becoming about the amount of game that you catch and all about, just the amount of flight, the good flights that you have. It's not really about the game that you catch. It's about the good flights, and I think by default, it kind of comes to that a little bit, because the more challenging quarry you fly with a long wing, the harder it really is to pull off. And so then you kind of have to become content with much lower numbers by default, which then, you kind of get a little razzed by some of the other members of the community that are, have these high head counts and stuff or whatever. And that's, I don't know. It's all in good fun. At least it is to me anyway. I enjoy razzing, a lot of my mutual friends about a lot of the same stuff. And, there's a lot to be said about, there are certain species and a lot of different types of flying that it is harder to pull off than other aspects of falconry. And then anybody that's saying that's not the case, I think it's kind of blowing smoke up your ass a little bit. But I mean, out of curiosity, where you're at though, I mean, what do you consider to be the hardest form of falconry to practice where you're at?
I would definitely say within like pretty close to where I am would probably be the sandgrass thing in the Free State, but I can't consistently get to sandgrass. Like I can't get a bird specifically for sandgrass. So I would say for me, the most difficult would probably be a long wing on spur fowl or Franklin in the mountains with your dog. Some people will say otherwise, but I think that's probably the most difficult for what I have access to. I have a few duck dams, and you can consistently get duck on the dam and put a bird up, and you'll catch duck. But when you start flying partridge, especially up in the mountains. So if you're out in the Free State, very long flat areas can generally get pretty good weather. Not always, especially in winter. But where I am in KZN, it's quite mountainous. So some of the time you're flying with updraft, or hopefully not normally downwinds, but you're flying up in the hills using a dog. I would say that's what I'm trying to pursue at the moment, or at least with a long wing in the winter season. That's what I tried to do last year. And yeah, that's definitely been the most difficult, because to find game birds consistently out in the hills is quite tough. Whereas, if you're in the Free State, it tends to be a bit flatter, easier terrain to walk on, as well as you can sometimes see them from the road, and then, where the game birds are at least. So yeah, that's probably the most difficult. I definitely think a falcon, I've flown more lanners than I've flown peregrines. I've only flown one passage peregrine, but I found the passage peregrine the lanners are so smart, from what I've noticed at least, is that they're so smart. I've had lanners where first free flight was, I think, 16 days after catching it. So caught it wild, 16 days first free flight, and I think from there mine was 2 weeks free flying to first kill. But other guys in the club have, I think, done first kill after 14 days of getting their bird, getting a lanner. So they're so smart, but they actually tend to they work it out, and then they work you out, and then they're like, know it too well. So they, if you're walking through the field, they'll like start to watch the dog, and, they know exactly what's about to happen. Whereas I found the peregrine that I did last year, and the year before and last year, was a different type of flying. I really enjoyed flying early mornings and late evenings and seeing the bird power up, because generally I was flying lanners and thermals. I've got lanners late afternoons, but they're not going like really, really pumping in that cold air. And my peregrine, at least in her first season, she would just straight line it a kilometer away. And at some point, I don't know when, but around a kilometer, she would turn around and she would straight line it back, and she would be at between 110 and 140 meters directly vertical, and then I could flush. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed flying the peregrine, and I'm hoping to do another one next year, female peregrine again. But to catch my last one, I drove 10,000 kilometers So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully I don't have to do that again.
Yikes. That's a lot of driving, dude. Yeah. I mean, I've driven cross country. I've driven cross country multiple times here in the U.S., and I know how exhausting that can be. But if you want one or want something bad enough, then you're willing to do it. But yeah. Well, before we kind of start to wrap things up here a little bit, though, I am curious, though, if you don't mind, go in a little bit more and just kind of outline what some of the differences are in the way things work with your rules and regs compared to, like, say they are in like the Western Cape. Sounds like there's a lot of similarities, and I don't even know if there are any differences, but I am curious.
Cool. So, I mean, I'll give you based on what I know. So I'm actually the secretary of the Natal Falconry Club and the secretary of SAFA, of the South African Falconry Association. So I'm quite fortunate. I get to see it on both sides. So how it works is SAFA is like the overarching body, but each province is run by its provincial club. So SAFA doesn't really have much of a say or much input here in KZN until there's problems, which, in most cases doesn't happen too often. But each club is self-managing or self-regulating. So in KZN especially, we have a really good relationship with our what we call KZN Wildlife, which is our national government body that manages wildlife and stuff in our province. In the Cape, they have Cape Nature. And yeah, the Falconry Club deals directly with them with very little input from SAFA. SAFA just does overarching suggestions. So, we put together last year social media guidelines, and those were SAFA's, and those were then suggested to the different clubs, and they then put those in place. And because the SAFA and the SAFA executive committee is made up of the different provincial clubs, that means that generally people are in agreement. And, there'll be disagreements here and there, but those get voted upon. But yeah, we take between 2 and 3 representatives from each provincial club, and those people make up the SAFA executive committee. And people, go from there, and things get brought up at a national level. But yeah, generally here in KZN, we're very lucky. We have a really, really good relationship with our KZN Wildlife, and they give us quite a lot of freedom. So in other provinces, there's a lot more regulation and a lot more, I would say, control by their provincial authorities. Whereas here in KZN, because of our relationship that we've built up, and because we're quite an old club, they are quite willing to let us go with it ourselves. So in KZN, our trapping permits and our keeping permits are such that, provided it's not a threatened or protected species, so peregrine, crowned eagle, and a few other birds, but the majority are non-threatened or protected, so they're on a club permit. So at any point, for example, if I get permission from my Natal Falconry Club committee, I can go and trap a bird. So I'm permitted that tomorrow I could go and trap a wild black sparrowhawk and fly it. I could go and trap a juvenile male ladder falcon, provided I've got permission from the committee. In other provinces, though, they need to apply ahead of time for a specific trapping permit for that specific species, and certain regulations. Like in a lot of clubs, they're only allowed to keep the bird for a 2-year period. Then it must be released if it's a trap bird. If it's been bred, that's a completely different story. But yeah, we have very little oversight. Well, not very little. There is still oversight from KZN Wildlife, but we're a self-regulating club. So we are required to, if members are out of standing, or if there's an issue where a guy maybe isn't looking after a bird, it's up to us as the club to almost police that. And if such time that they leave the club and they're still doing bad things, then they're not part of the club. Then we are responsible to at least report them to the authorities to deal with. But in most provinces, you have to be a member of your provincial club to do falconry, full stop. Here in KZN, you're not allowed to do falconry without being part of the Natal Falconry Club. If enough people got together and went to KZN Wildlife and got permission to start a new club, that could probably happen, but definitely not people without any experience. They realize that the fact that we have a mentorship program, and the fact that some of our members have been doing falconry for 40, 50 years. Some of the guys were there when they started SAFA. So they understand that it's better to do it this way than to let anyone practice falconry. And where there is a bit of a grey line is bird abatement. But yeah, in Natal at least, you have to be a member of the Natal Falconry Club to even practice bird abatement.
Cool. Yeah. And so, I know like the different stuff that Andre and some of the other guys were telling me though, as far as like the way things work in like the Western Cape, for example, like technically the club, even though you buy a bird, like the club technically still owns the bird because of the whole policing aspect of things and things like that. I mean, is that, and then as far as trapping birds and stuff, they only have like a couple people in the club that do the trapping for the whole club and stuff. Like what are some of the similarities and differences there? Is that kind of how things work for there as well? Or is it, or do guys get to, or do the members get to go and trap their own birds like in your province?
So at least in my province, if you buy a bird, and there's quite, I want to say, strict laws around who can buy birds and what birds you can buy. But if, let's say, you do buy a bird, that bird isn't owned by the club. But if you trap a bird and it's on the club thing, that technically is owned by the club, or is, it's property of the club, I guess. So, if you are a B-graded falconer or up, so in our system you have a novice falconer, then you get a C-grade falconer, then a B-grade falconer. There's different levels within B-grade, and then there's an A-grade. And this is in the process of changing at the moment, but that's the current system. And in that, if you're a B3 or the lowest B grade and above, you can trap your own birds and you can trap birds for other guys in the club, providing you have the permission from the committee. If you're below that, you need someone to trap you the bird. And that's, it is quite tough, to be honest. Like with with the guy who I'm helping at the moment with mentorship, I had to help him trap a goshawk, and I had just been trapping my own peregrine and I finally caught her, and then I had to trap someone else's bird, and it's different when you're not catching your own bird. It's very, very different. So yeah, I don't think that anyone should just be able to go out and trap. So I agree with why the system's in place, but it does make it a bit difficult. And if only, your top guys can trap and there's not any, kind of intermediate phase or intermediate guys you can also trap, then it does leave a lot of responsibility on those guys, especially when the club is quite small. We in Natal have 20 total members in our Natal Falconry Club, of which probably 10 to 12 are actively flying birds. And I think we're the third biggest club behind Gauteng and the Cape.
Okay. Yeah, that's the main things I was curious about, as far as some of the similarities and differences as far as how things work between provinces, or at least, the provinces that I'm, have any kind of familiarity with, down there and stuff. So that's cool. I mean, it sounds like for the most part, then things operate pretty similar then, from province to province. And I'm sure to a degree, I mean, that probably is helpful. Not that I think that necessarily, except aside from meats and things, that probably I wouldn't guess there's not a whole lot of people going from one province to the other to hunt a lot, because of just some of the logistics involved in that. But
yeah. So if I want to, for example, this season that I've just finished, my winter season, I traveled to the Free State for the Free State field meet, and I traveled to Mpumalanga for the SAFA field meet. And for me to go to the Free State field meet, I obviously have to have my keeping permit for my peregrine, my TOPS permit, because it was a peregrine, so that's threatened or protected species, and then I needed to have an import permit into Free State and an export permit out of KZN. So it's a lot of permits just to go to another province. So yeah, we do make it happen, especially for SAFA. For the SAFA field meet, I haven't missed a single one, and I hope I never do, because it's great, and I really hope to see you next year. That would be so much fun. And hopefully, I'll have a bird next year. And it's looking like, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's SAFA's 40th year, or 40, was it? Yeah, it's something like, or the 40th SAFA, or something like that. I need to actually confirm, and I'll send it out to you. But yeah, we're going big. So there should be a lot of like you can buy shirts and we'll get some memorabilia and cool stuff. So we're going to try and make it a big one. So yeah, I would love to have you there if you can make it.
Cool. Yeah, we'll talk. We'll kind of try and brainstorm ways we can make it happen and stuff. But yeah, I mean, before is there anything else you want to add real quick that we haven't covered or anything that before we get your another memorable hunting story and your piece of advice to kind of end things? Is there anything I've tried to think of most of the things that I was curious about that I wanted to kind of cover as far as just in relation to how things are in different parts of South Africa, but
yeah, no, I don't think there's anything relating to our system. I did want to ask though, your guys' season is just kicking off now. Are you flying
Correct.
a bird? What's your plan for the season?
Well, I mean, my life has just been nuts this year anyway. Had a lot of life changes and stuff personally. Right now I'm training a new male Harris mainly for an abatement job that I'm working. I'm actually going to Kansas next week with a couple of friends on a hunting trip. I'm going to fly the female Harris that I flew last year. And I'm going to go ahead and fly her and possibly go ahead and try and get this male entered on. I'm having a personal debate on whether or not I really want to get this male entered on fur at all, since I'm going to be using it more for feather abatement, being pigeons and stuff. So I kind of have this right now I'm actually getting him just trained, like laser trained and getting recall and stuff down with him and stuff before I'm really worried about getting a lot of actual, hunting, since he's going to be, at least initially, more of an abatement bird. That being said, if I can finish him up in a relatively short amount of time, like within the next couple weeks or so, whenever I get back from Kansas, I might go ahead. My plan all along was to fly a passage red tail again over my dachshunds and do primarily squirrel hawking, because that's where the fun lies for me. But I'm also in a position where I need to make money. And so a lot of my extra spare time kind of has to go towards that right now, unfortunately, just because of the cards that I've been dealt this year with, a divorce and now basically working off of one source of income, which is me. So to answer your question, my plan is still hopefully to be able to work in the time to fly, but I don't have the time to train two birds at once. I can't do it right now. So I've tried flying two birds last season, and I don't know if I'll ever do that again. As far as training one and then trying to get the other, kind of, I don't know if I ever care to really do that again, just because of what we talked about earlier. Something suffers in there, instead of having one really good bird, you've got two birds, or whatever the case is. So, if I don't have the time for that plan, then I will just go back to my other old reliable, which is getting a passage kestrel and having some good old fashioned fun come spring with starlings. And one way or the other, that'll be one of those two things will be my plan. And in the interim, if I really feel like I need to occasionally hunt and fly, I've already got like 5 or 6 head of game with 5 or 6 bunnies with the Harris that I flew last year, just kind of having some fun in between breaks on the abatement job that I was just talking about. Catching bunnies and stuff in between.
Those bunnies in the daytime. Were you hunting? Is it bunnies at night? Yeah. Are you guys allowed to hunt bunnies at night?
Technically, no. We're not allowed to hunt bunnies at night. Yeah, we're not technically allowed to lamp here or anything like that. Yeah. So, but yeah. So that, to answer your question, that's my plan. What's going to be your what if you have a bird that you're going to ideally try and fly next year for said Safa meet and everything like that? What's your ideal plan for that then? What kind of bird?
So I got an English setter puppy this time. Well, it was in January this year. So I had a second year passage peregrine, or once intermewed passage peregrine, that I flew this year in his first season when he is still a puppy. So I then released her at the end of the season about 2 months ago, and now we're about to go into our quail season. The quail are arriving now. So with these big storms that we've been having, the quail are arriving. So the fun is starting. So it's going to be perfect for the puppy. And I'm hoping to do a black sparrowhawk now, a passage, or more of a late brancher. As it's kind of leaving the nest in the woodlot, I'll try and trap one. But if I'm running out of time, I'll probably do what I did last year and get another laneret, because they, like I said, they're just so smart and so quick turnaround. Like I can be hunting in like 2-3 weeks. So yeah, I'll do that if I run out of time, because our quail meet is the 15th or the 12th to the 15th of December this year, something like that. So yeah, I'm going to be flying a bird until then, hopefully. And then I'll probably release the bird in early January. And then I won't have a bird, and I'll probably start trapping again in February. And for next year, there's a small chance if I get a black sparrow that I'd keep it for the Safa field meet and keep it and fly it up until then. But I would love to do another female passage peregrine, and I'll try trap her in February, March, latest early April, and get her going and keep that for probably 2 seasons. But yeah, we'll just have to see how it plans out. But I think really I want to try and utilize the quail. We're really lucky in this province. It's like what you were saying earlier, of like when you try to do something with a bird that you maybe don't quite have the quarry for, it always suffers. And like, or at least, the quality of flying suffers. The bird might fly every day, but you're not it's not catching lots of stuff and, always being put on game, seeing stuff. But the quail, we just have it on our doorstep where there's such big numbers that you're getting so many flights so consistently that I really want to try and target quail. So yeah, that's my plan for the next little while. I wanted to ask one more thing though. What is the legalities for you guys around bird abatement and your clubs? Because that's been a bit of I would say a controversial point here, but things that have changed quite a lot in the last few years here, in terms of in the past, because anybody who was doing bird abatement had come through the ranks. You just had to be an A-grade falconer. But now it's changing slightly in that there's people coming through who have either no falconry experience or very little and are wanting to pursue abatement. And now the clubs, and I kind of misspoke earlier saying that you had to be part of the Natal club to do abatement here, because that's recently changed, where we're actually saying that no, we want them to be separate. There's still some oversight, but we're trying to make it as little as possible. But I'm interested to hear what it's like where you are, because I hear you practice abatement, but you're also part of the falconry club doing what I guess you'd call pure falconry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way our clubs work here isn't anything like the way your clubs work. Like, you don't have to be a practicing member of a club, or you don't have to be a part of NAFA or your state club to practice falconry. Our clubs are purely more of just like a support system, where if you want to be a part of the larger community and kind of support just the falconry in the state, and how things go. In other words, it's a lot more of a social type thing, and the way things work here. But that being said, with our state DNR and our state, wildlife conservation, state government and federal government, the people that do go between the falconers and, the state and national governments, are the clubs, so if you want to kind of be a member of the clubs and kind of have some degree of a say or input as to kind of some different things you'd like to see changed or worked on, or even volunteer to be on your state club board or whatever, and be able to have kind of that go between when things happen that come up with some of the state regulations and things like that, then you do need to be involved to some degree in a club, because that's who, is kind of active and working with or coordinating with the DNR to get changes in regulations and rules and things like that made. But to be a practicing falconer, you don't have to actually be a member of clubs. So if you want to be able to have a voice and advocate for certain things, then you should be a member of a club and also be a member of NAFA. That being said, if you just want to practice falconry and don't care about any of that, then theoretically you can do that. And as far as it applies to abatement actually isn't really even, you are kind of subjected to your state rules as far as abatement is concerned, as far as being a certain level, whether that's, different states require different things as far as like if you want to hold an abatement permit, then you kind of in some states have to be a master level and stuff. But to practice abatement, if you're practicing under somebody else's permit, then you can be a lower level. But you don't have to be a member of a state or national club to do that. You just to be able to actually hold your own permit, you have to be master in most states, I think. And then in order to practice abatement, you can practice under somebody else and under their business or whatever. But you still have to be, oftentimes you still have to meet certain requirements. But at any rate, that's kind of how that works. But an abatement permit is a federal permit here. Different rules, regulations, cost, whatever. It's separate from falconry permit. And it's also separate from education permit. It's also separate from falconry school permit. It's also separate from so you get nickel and dime the more stuff you want to do and have permits for and abilities to do. But at any rate,
sure, because it is quite similar. Like in the past, it was that you had to be an A grade falconer to practice bird abatement, and then it was you had to be an A grade falconer to have a bird abatement business, and you could have B grade falconers working under you. But yeah, what was agreed upon at a SAFA level was that the requirements, and I think this is why your guys are separate already, is that what you need to know and the skills you need to possess as an abatement person, while there is some interlap or overlap with falconry, the husbandry side of things, looking after the bird, there's also a lot that's not directly applicable. And probably a lot more skills that you would need to know as an abatement person, potentially dealing with the public. That would happen more frequently in a complete urban setting where you're doing bird abatement or whatever. That's kind of the direction that we're moving on, and that's been happening over the last 2 years since I've been involved, and it was a talking point since back in 2015 before I was involved. So we still working it out and making sure that we go about it the right way, because we don't want to just if it's completely left up to them to self-police themselves. It's businesses self-policing other businesses. So then there is a bit of who's the biggest business and trying to so we're trying to avoid that. But yeah, that's the deal here in South Africa.
Yeah, I can see there being some degree of conflict of interest there, for sure. But yeah, so I mean, there's differences for sure, and just the differences in how the rules and regs work there compared to how they work here. I mean, I still kind of think that some kind of hybridization between the way we do things and the way you guys do things would be a good reform for both countries, personally, just from what I've learned so far. But that's like a whole other topic of conversation, I guess. I mean, I like some of the things that you guys do more than what we do, and I'm sure that there's things that about the way we do things that you guys would kind of like to cherry pick and adopt too. But that being said, the way you guys' government works is a heck of a lot different than the way our government works too. So
I think you guys are a bit more efficient on a lot of things. Maybe not.
I don't know, man. The lines get blurred more and more each passing minute, it seems like, anymore with a lot of that kind of stuff. But yeah, anyway, cool. I mean, I'm thanks for asking and your curiosity on how things work here as well. Hopefully, it'll be informative for the folks over there that listen and stuff too, to a degree. But that being said, I mean, we can go ahead and start wrapping this up, man. I want to get it in one more good hunting story from you, or one of your favorite stories or experiences that you can think of, and a piece of advice, and we can call it good.
I think hunting stories, I've got lots of hunting stories in my head, but I don't know which one exactly to go for. I've had a couple of the least spectacular flights that are like the ones that are the most memorable, just because of how hard I worked for them. But I would say one of the most beautiful flights actually was a bird that wasn't mine. So I don't know if it needs to be my bird, but I'll tell you the story anyway. And we were flying my mentor's bird, and he thermal flies his peregrine, and we were at Safa. I can't remember what year it was exactly. I think it was 2018 potentially. I think it was 2018 or maybe 2019. And we were at Safa, and it was this really hot day. And we pulled up on the side of the road, and we saw birds. We saw Orange River Franklin in this field. Okay, we marked them, parked the car, and we looked up over this field, and it was so hot that we call it mealies, but I believe you guys call it corn. So like the cornfield, the dried corn, like the things that cover the actual corn on the cob, were flying up in the air because it was so hot and there was such a big thermal. Anyway, my mentor takes off his bird's hood and he lets it go. And it was probably 2 minutes, 3 minutes max. And this bird was like, I think 250 meters directly vertical above us. And we walked out into this field, and I've actually got a video. I'll have to share it with you somehow. But we walk into the field and we bump the Orange River, and there was one Swainson in this group of Orange River. And the birds, they're like flying away from me, and I'm standing there recording this video. And the guy I'm with says, "Where's the bird?" Because at this point, nothing's happened. And I'm like, "I don't know." And all of a sudden, I just hear, and like within 2 meters on my left side, this bird shot. She does something. Instead of like stooping the prey, she stoops the people. So she like stooped on us and shot past us at level flight. And the time that she closed the distance in was just one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen in my life. And yeah, to this day, that was still one of the best flights I've ever seen. But yeah, that wasn't even with my bird. I can't even claim that one. I wish I could. I've had some good ones, but that one I think takes the cake.
Nice. And I mean, just as far as your own bird, though, I mean, out of curiosity, what do you think would be there's always, it seems like one that sticks out in your mind more than others, as far as just, I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a memorable flight. It just be a memorable experience in general with a particular bird. I would assume probably, yeah. I mean, you already talked about the one story with your red-breasted sparrowhawk, but
yeah, the teal one was obviously a really memorable one, but actually probably the best story, and probably the one that sticks out the most, was I had gotten that bird. It was February in the year, and I was getting quite a lot of kills with like small testiculars, LBJs, but I'd always been told that snipe was like really difficult and really good flying. At the time, I wasn't aware just how good it was. Now I've seen the snipe videos online. I've watched it myself, and it's some really spectacular flying. But I was on my 48th kill of the season, and I walked out into my usual field for the afternoon. I was at school, boarding school, and I go out there and I did my usual like big round walk, and I caught a testicular. So I was like, I'm on 49 kills. And the day before, I'd walked through this marshland, and a snipe had gotten up, and my bird had tried to grab one and like hit it, but didn't bind to it, and it got away. And I was on 49 kills, and she'd missed a few times, so she was kind of getting over it at that point. But I was like, I mean, this would be a great story. 50th kill, a snipe, maybe head down to the marshland. So I walked down to the marshland, and sure as hell, almost exactly where it was the day before, the snipe gets up. And almost every time before that, when she'd chase after it, she'd put it like 5 or 6 meters, and then like sometimes she'd go for it a bit further, but she was kind of hesitating. Besides the day before where she had gotten feathers and not held on. And I think that had switched something in her. And the snipe got up like 2 meters in front of us, and it flew, I don't know, maybe like 25 meters. It wasn't even that far of a flight. But she just chased it down over such a short amount of time and plucked it out the sky. It was just such a shocking experience, and it was still one of the best ones because it was her 50th kill. And yeah, still one of the more spectacular flights that I had. But yeah, just the whole experience and everything with it being that day and the day before when it happened. That's one that sticks out. Not necessarily as being spectacular, but definitely one that sticks out.
That's pretty impressive though, man. I mean, I've heard from many of my friends that fly snipe with like, passage peregrines and that it's, and, other species of course too, that it's really hard to get a snipe in a tail chase like that. And, so that's pretty, it's not unspectacular. Let's just put it that way. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. If you can, claim at least one of those, but, no, that's awesome, man.
It was only ever one. And when my mentor heard about this flight story, him and his mentor put up a prize. They said at Safa, if anyone can catch a snipe, they'll get 2,000 Rand. So I was like, I've just caught my first one. Okay, I'm in. And I got to Safa, and I never caught another snipe with that bird, unfortunately. But that was when I caught the teal with the red spar, because I was trying to target snipe, but when she was chasing after a snipe, the teal popped up in front of her and caught it. So I was happy with the teal, but the snipe would have got me 2 grand. So I was a bit bleak.
Well, I have to ask though, with the size difference and everything, did she just get that snipe, or did she just get that teal perfectly by the head or something? Like how did she manage to really hold on and kind of make that happen? That's still quite a bit of a nice little size difference there. Go ahead and just tell that story real quick, and we'll get your piece of advice and call it good.
So it was really, really cold. I remember that vividly. And I still wear Crocs a lot, but I was wearing Crocs, and the actual top layer of the marsh was frozen. So I'm like walking on ice, and it's cracking, and she chases after the snipe, and the teal breaks up, and it maybe got 1.5 meters off the ground, 2 meters off the ground. And she just grabbed it and got on the ground. And actually, she had it by the bum, not by the head at all. And she was getting pulled through the water and through the reeds. And luckily I was pretty close. I just sprinted over. And as I got there, I just dove onto her, grabbed the teal.
Yeah.
Grabbed the teal, grabbed her. And then I was covered. I was frozen. It was so cold, but it was worth it. I was chuffed.
I got you. Yeah, no, I mean, that sounds similar to the Canada geese experiences that I've had with my Harris's hawks and some other similar stuff too. So it's, I mean, it's if you're not there and you're not getting there quick, then it's probably not going to end very well. In other words, so
yeah.
That's crazy though, man. That's still a pretty cool experience, and but yeah, man, this has been a fun conversation. I'm happy that we could work it out, and hopefully we'll get to do another one sometime in person. But before we end, I do want to get a piece of advice from you, and then once you share that, and go ahead and hang on here while these files upload and everything, we'll talk a little bit more about some other stuff. But yeah, man, thanks again so much for sharing and everything. And let's get your piece of advice, and this will be a good conversation and wrap it up. So
perfect. Before I go ahead with that, I just want to thank you very much for having me on, and for such a light and genuine and thoughtful conversation. I appreciate it. It's been great to chat.
My pleasure, man.
And, I've listened to quite a few of the episodes, so it's weird being on this end of it, but it's been really cool and nice to chat. And thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, all good,
in terms of a piece of advice, I would say something that's been consistent, at least in my falconry career that I've seen, is, I want to say, like the legwork. It's like, sometimes luck happens. Really, sometimes, like last year, drove 10,000 kilometers for the Passage Peregrine I trap, but I only drove 2 days for total of maybe 4 hours or 150 Ks for the ladder I trap. And I feel like legwork for me has always been something that I've been able to do when maybe I haven't necessarily had the skills. And I think that's why maybe my first bird was, a decent bird. And from there was, I always feel like, if you can walk in the field for 3 hours, go walk in the field for 3 hours, make it happen. The bird is flying some of the time. It's not going to be like some people are like, oh, I'll fly my bird for like a quick hour or a quick 20 minutes, whatever. I was out in the fields walking. I was doing 10Ks walking a day. And I feel like that was when I had the best experiences and the most rewarding flights, and just being out in the field and out doing the thing is more important than, a lot of the other stuff that sometimes becomes important. And the further I've got along in my falconry journey, and the more I've tried to remind myself of that feeling of holding my first bird. Like the day I went for my introduction and I met Bruce Padbury, and he let me hold his bird on my glove, and it was like a different feeling. And sometimes I get like waves of that when I get a new bird, or like I have a really cool flight, and it's very nostalgic, but it's like a very it's just a different feeling. And I think trying to remind myself that it's not necessarily about the spectacular stuff. It's not always about the best flights. Sometimes it's about the day that you walk for 10Ks, you get 2 flights, and you just manage to get something right at the end of the day, the sun's setting, and that makes it worth it. Those are the days, those days where you put in the effort. Those are actually the days that it's for. And for being out in nature and being out in the bush, that's what we're really doing it for. So yeah, I would say to try and just do that as much as possible. Don't let it be about having birds, be about flying birds, and not for other people to see you flying birds, but for being out in the field by yourself, no one else talking. I think devices and phones have really maybe not been so good for humanity as a whole. And I think when you're out in the field flying your bird with your falcon in the sky, you actually can't be thinking about your phone. You can't be thinking about who's trying to phone you, what work you have to do for the next day. All you're thinking about is being in this experience with nature. And I think that's what I love about falconry. And that's what I would like to, that would be my piece of advice, to try and let it be about the right things.
Perfect, man. Perfect. Well, thanks again. I'm glad that we can make this happen once again. I can't say it enough. Appreciate you. And we'll go ahead and call this good. And like I said, hang out for a few minutes here while these files upload, and we'll talk a little bit more. But yeah, man, I'll get some more information from you, and hopefully we can make some in-person stuff happen next year. It'd be great.
Yeah, really, really would love that. And I really hope that you can make the SAF field meet. I think it would be so much fun. Next year is going to be a big one, and it would be all the better with you there. And if there's anyone else who's listening out there who would like to attend the SAFA field meet and can make the effort to come out to the tip of Africa, please, by all means, make it happen. It will probably be the 1st or 2nd week of July, somewhere around there. We'll confirm dates pretty soon. But yeah, thanks. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, man. We'll hang out for a few, and we'll talk again soon.
Perfect. Thanks.